Hey folks, it's Maxwell here and welcome to the 5th episode of 21st Century Wrestling, the best of British wrestling. We're here on TEW IX and we're on the road to effectively the equivalent of 21st Century Wrestling's WrestleMania. It's their finale. So I was doing a wee bit of nosy and deep diving into how it's been previously. Apparently the show may have been at a different point, that particular pay-per-view. But I feel this year we're going to run it similar to kind of like Survivor Series as a proper World War that way. But I think going forward after that into like 2023, 24, etc., we'll probably more go towards that WrestleMania like feel where we'll have like the big marquee matches like they're properly going to war. But again, it's just been a whole case of kind of learning really what the universe is about here and the Cornell verse. I did a wee bit of discussion as well on the Grey Dog software forums. I was like, I seem to be struggling a wee bit, it's quite difficult. And then I remember like the advice I always said to people was don't get frustrated in the first couple of months of a new save. Forgetting really I don't start too many saves in a TW cycle. They're lengthy, but it's always getting over that hurdle the first couple of months that can be a bit tricky till you figure out what works, what doesn't work, and get people into the places that you want them to be. So it might be a few months before we properly start gaining pop in the UK especially. I've made a few alterations to kind of protect the company a little bit. Even though the reality is, like, I'm down as the owner of the company, so I'm not going to get sacked. But I do imagine we are likely to fall, not just one size, but two, because we'll be lower than what I think Big is in the UK. I believe that is. It's 77 anyway. I think we'll drop under that. But to protect the TV deal, what I did do is spoke to the network and moved us from basically evening to late evening just to protect it. So instead of like having to get a 77 rating, I think it's like a 66, 67, so a wee bit more protection on the TV deal. Because I think if we lose that, it could affect us. Money wise, we're okay, you know, we're sitting in that 8 million bracket. That'll get a better indication of are we making profit, are we going to lose money every month? Obviously, in a few days' time, once we do that monthly skip into February. So there's a few things that are still uncertain, but again, it's just learning a database effectively and seeing where we are. So hopefully this show does continue on a couple of the storylines. There's a few things that will be rematches at World War. We've got a few vignettes for new acts, we've got a couple of new signings, etc. But please bear in mind a lot of the new signings don't have any pop in the UK, so we're going to see a lot in 0 ratings, and it's going to take time and time, segment after segment, to build them up before we get them matches. So yeah, let's see how this chaos goes. On to the 5th episode of Best of British Wrestling from 21st Century Wrestling. Let's do it. So before we kick on with the show, having 5,800 fans in Southern England, I noticed as well something that's a little bit different is normally you'd get the promises that someone would put someone over for 2 matches. I've had it for 2 angles this time, so I wonder, does that mean that they are happy to take a beatdown instead of actually physically getting pinned? So I'll be intrigued to see that. I've got a few months to work on it. It's going to be one against Adam McTravis. He's happy to put someone over. I've got till May, so we'll be here a while before that actually comes into fruition. But anyway, let's crack on with today's show. We start the show with Mr. 21st Century Wrestling, Tommy Cornell, and he's joined in the ring with the flamboyant entrance of Jack Bruce, who had followed by Adam McTravers. I think you get the pop for Tommy. Adam's like a seasoned vet, so it's like, yeah, and then it's a rock star Jack Bruce, and the crowd goes mental. TC says we're just a few short weeks away from World War, and the big matchup between ourselves and the House of Business. Now I can confirm, of course, it will be us 3 superstars, and we will be actively looking for 2 more partners to take them down in the next few weeks. He hands the mic over to Jack Bruce, who says to the whole roster, be on notice. What a breakout opportunity this could be, a chance to wrestle with some of the best against some of the best this company has to offer. Also, of course, the most dangerous. So that's obviously directed at the House of Business and, of course, Edward Cornell. The segment rating was a 78, and the storyline advances, Tommy Cornell having the crowd in the palm of his hand. Our opening contest has a decent match. Bedlam defeated Michael X in 7:41 by submission with a Mind Strangler, and this was our storytelling match to suit our product. Now, a lot of matches will end submission. Half the time I just go, submission, pinfall, it doesn't really matter. So I just kind of leave it as long as the winner's fine. So you will notice maybe a few more submission victories. That's probably why. But anyway, wrestling rating was a 60. Crowd got a 64. And the segment a 63. Bedlam there with a 68. performance. After the match, we then cut to him backstage. We'll just say we had an ad break in there. We don't hear much from Bedlam. He just grunts and grunts before letting out a big "ah." I'm not going to do that very loud in a monstrous way. So with Bedlam, like, looking at his stats, he has good brawling and very good menace, but absolutely nothing in terms of a promo. So I felt like this was the best way we could have that and advance the feud between him and Rolly Muckletruck. 67 for the segment. So sadly though, the storyline lost a bit of heat. This is disappointing, but there's a reason why we need to have these matches. In an abysmal match, with Reese Pendragon defeat Smiling John Smithy in 7:35 with Pendragon's triangle, so submission victory. This was a 39, a 30, and a 30 overall. The crowd thought these were two pre-show workers, but of course Reese, the protege of Tommy Cornell, I feel like he's someone that we need to build up, so he's going to have to be on television for the audience to be exposed to him. So, well, we need people to put him over, and that starts with Smiling John Smithy. The big 5-on-5 match might come too early for him in terms of overness, despite it making perfect sense. We then run to a new vignette, and it's a soon-to-debut tag team here in 21st Century Wrestling. We see the familiar face of Chris Knightley, and he stands in the background alongside new signing Michael Gregory, along with Jasmine Perlot in the front. And it's Jasmine who talks. She says, 21st Century Wrestling, welcome to Drop Dead Gorgeous. Easy for me to say. Just pretend it's on a French accent. Two absolute studs of men who combine their model great looks and back it up with being excellent in the ring. This will show all you ugly peasants in the crowd how real men work. So it was just someone I found. Gregory looked pretty decent. It said in game that he's been in a relationship with Perlo in the previous company, so I thought we'll bring them in, and I thought maybe can add a bit more depth to tag division. Knightley can join with them. There we go. We basically have Maxine Dupree and Maximum Male Models. But segment rating was a 4. Obviously no real overness in the UK. I think Michael Gregory is actually English, but he's never really wrestled too much in the UK. And it was a great and a very good rating for their gimmicks. So good stuff there. We'll see how that goes. It's probably actually Chris Knightley's popularity that's given him 4, if I'm being honest. Next up, more building up. This is why we changed it to main event spotlight. It was an abysmal match that saw Forrest Charmer defeat Vinny Vigilante in 7:54 with the Lucky Charm. This was a 32-25-26, and obviously I view Forrest Charmer as this up and coming great promo that we can really get to a good level if he can improve in ring. But of course, he needs to get the spotlight on him. He needs to have these matches to help him develop. We then cut backstage, and it's an ambush by Hellbound as Blackheart and Gravedigger have got their hands on Kelly and Lance Martin. It's a complete beatdown all across the arena before the screen goes to black. Then out of nowhere pops Jonathan Faust, and he just basically says, I keep telling you week after week after week, Hellbound are taking over and we're going to destroy all your favourites. So it was a 2-part promo, or segment here, a 40 for the first part for the beatdown, a 69 for the promo was good. 56 overall, but again it loses a bit of heat in the storyline. So whilst we are forward in these storylines, some of them maybe quite aren't picking up the heat as much as we need, so that might result in us losing a bit of popularity. Next up, tag team action, and it was the Northern Lights defeating Cool 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 in 11:47 when Alton Vicious defeated Look Cool with a Lights Out. You can see here in terms of in-ring performance, the babyface is just a little bit ahead with a 62 and a 65, and it was a 60 rating for the wrestling, a 57 for the crowd, with the segment getting a 63. Hey, we've went from last week's 0 to this week's 1. The vignettes are working. But anyway, we have another hit video for the Demon Luchador El Demonisco. It highlights his super aerial ability, but also many of his heelish antics as well. So again, introducing them to the crowd. Decent matchup here. We had the House of Business having Edward Cornell in action. He's joined by Doomsday, and they defeat Absolutely Flawless in 13-18 when Edward Cornell defeated Kelly Martin with the Black Lightning Bomb. So obviously they've been beaten down earlier on tonight, they've been destroyed, and here Cornell and Doomsday pick up the win. So yeah, pretty happy with that one. you can see Doomsday's kind of like way below what Edward Cornell is, but I feel you'd have to move away from the faction feuds and proper into like Cornell v Cornell if you're wanting constant popularity gains. We then moved on to a decent matchup that saw Sebastian Kohler continue his momentum with a win over Antithesis in 10:35 with the Hamburg Rock City. Pretty level in terms of performances, but the segment did flop. 56 for the wrestling, 64 for the crowd, and just a 49 for the segment. This leads to, on the ramp, popping up, Sebastian Kohler sees the UK champion War Machine and his manager, Cliff King. Cliff King says, "Now let me get this straight, Kohler. You think that's right, you deserve a title shot against this man? You think just because we can go out and offer a challenge that you can do the same? Well, you know what? We've been thinking about it, we've thought about it. World War, sure, we'll go to war with you, but you'll be planning your funeral." So just showing how much of a dominant force War Machine is. Terrible promo, but a good worker in terms of brawling. Again, it's a very brawl-heavy company, which probably makes sense. Well, a lot of people's viewpoint of the UK, I'd say it's probably moved away from that in this day and age, but basically, so we've got Collar versus War Machine set up for the pay-per-view. And the storyline actually gained heat, so hopefully we might have 4 storylines that are hot and 2 cold. Next up, we catch a backstage promo with Lee Burton, and he says, make sure it's all fully there, a few weeks ago, I got my rematch for the World Championship against Wade Orson, and I appreciate that. But I do not appreciate that little big-mouthed idiot Forrest Charmer deciding to get involved. So I'm going to set a challenge up for the champ who can respond next week. The final chance, my final opportunity. Me and you, we go to war for 30 minutes in an Iron Man match. So again, hopefully a decent promo with the 70. The storyline advances, loses a bit of heat, but I'm hoping like people go, oh, there's Forrest Charmer getting mentioned, can get his popularity up a wee bit, and Lee Burton improvised throughout the segment. And it took us to our main event, which didn't deliver either, so we are totally losing pop again. But it was about to have good heat and decent wrestling. Jack Bruce and Tommy Cornell, they defeated the Men of Steel in 11:47, so the team of Mass Hulk and Mark Adonis, when Jack Bruce pinned Mass Hulk with the New York Minute. Mass Hulk was a weak link, only with 52. Adonis not actually too far off of Jack Bruce there in performance, but the crowd were into it. The wrestling was decent, but the final segment was a 60. What was the main negative, out of curiosity? Lack of associated storyline. Is it really because Cornell and Jack Bruce are in the same storyline as a team? Like, fair enough, I understand that, but I used to get penalised for that all the time, actually. Because I wouldn't want to have every match have, like, oh, it's definitely got to be, you know, Bruce and Cornell versus some combination of the House of Business. But yeah, that'd be the case, that's what we'll need to do. But I'd have thought, you know, if we get 2 tag partners that are aligned with each other in the same storyline, maybe pushes forward. But oh well, again, I always had turned off strict storylines in the last game because I was just having fun chasing achievements, so part of the learning curve. So, okay, we had a really bad show here. So overall, only a 55. The show lost its popularity in the UK, but it increased their popularity to everyone else. The general feeling is that 2CW don't have enough storylines rated hot or above going on, and the fans are disappointed that of the storylines further during the show, none really had dramatic stakes. Okay. We might need to dip into Edward Cornell versus Jack Bruce to see how that goes. So I'm actually going to go through this just so we can have a look at how bad things look. So financial report, like 8.9 million is good. Obviously we'll find out what the situation is once we get to the end of the month. The popularity recap, you can see they're dropped down to 77, so if that drops again, we are dropping down a level and everything else is fine. And obviously, with being TV, we don't have a media scrum, so we'll take a wee look. We'll jump through here, we'll let it load up, and yeah, we'll have a look at kind of what's happening here. Anything here directly affected us? It doesn't seem to have went down particularly well. Okay, that's fair enough. So you can see here we're big just now, but achieved 77 popularity in the 5 regions of the UK, so we probably will drop to medium. But I'd like to think with the financial situation, we should be okay. Like performance is 382k, but obviously it could change in a few days' time. We're still unhappy, and we only got a 0.98. If I just go to broadcasting, in fact, I'm not even going to go to broadcasting actually. Top hundreds. So it's our worst show. You can see they've been dropped to a 0.8. So we actually, I don't know if we went down each one, but obviously the change of TV slot is obviously going to hurt us a little bit. But, of course, you're quite have 5 hot storylines, you have 4. So to give an idea as well, like I do tend to not run storylines in previous saves, but as I say, creative, wanted a bit of challenge. So Bedlam's fine, Take Care of Business is very hot, Futures now is very hot as well. The tag division's a little cold, that's cold, and that's starting to heat up as well. So maybe I should have like 9 storylines, but alternate like 4 maybe one week and then 5 the other that progress, because you only need to progress 2 per show, but obviously one's going to have to be like the main event. There was one other thing I was going to check. So the one I want to check is actually, there's 2, so El de Manisco, still only 1 popularity. You can see obviously great in Mexico. Forest Charmer, well, he's gaining pop. So if we look at his progress, starts at 23 and we've gone up to 27. So he's only 21. Let's say in-ring is not particularly great, but it was at 94 charisma that stood out to me. So yeah, we'll see what we can, even if we can get him over, not really wrestle too much, and then just have like his own talk show. So we'll see what happens. On the road to World War, we still have 3 shows to book, I think, before then, so still a lot of time to get stuff together. I'll see if there's any people we can get, and yeah, we have actually signed Ernest Youngman as well. It's just a case of where we can fit him in, because obviously talented across the board, but has no popularity in the UK. So just watching, much appreciated. Any comments on the save, how your own saves are going in the Seaverse? Let me know how you're getting on, and yeah, you can catch me on Twitter at TEW IX as well, and I'll be kicking about the Grey Dog software forums and the Fantasy Booker subreddit as well. Take it easy, I'll see you soon. Bye bye.